New Dimensions by Void King Chapter 4. You know he is coming back with a mullet, snarked Commander Kelly Grayson. She sat on the bridge next to Captain Ed Mercer. They were scanning for traces of Kalen activity. Things were quiet and going well, so they were a bit bored. She and Kelly had actually been married before they served together. She had engaged in an extramarital affair which ultimately led to a divorce and a long bitter period of animosity. It turned out not to be entirely her fault, since the species she had slept with had unexpected appeal to humans when it was in its mating cycle. Still, she regretted any harm that she caused Ed through that ordeal. "He doesn't have hair," answered the captain. He had sent Bortus and Gordon Malloy out together because he knew Gordon could be a bad influence on Bortus and felt that Bortus had to learn how to work together. "He didn't have facial growth either, but the mustache happened," responded Kelly. "True. Worst case, we'll teach Bortus how to sing Sweet Home, Alabama, for the next talent show." Speaking of them reminded him to check on their status. "Any word from them, Tala?" The Zellian officer looked at her control panel and frowned. "You know, Captain, with have not. They're overdue." "Do they have any bars?" John Lamar. He was the chief engineer but was on the bridge to help since Bortus and Gordon Malloy were off ship. "I mean, if they have bars, Gordon might have gotten distracted." "There are no bars in the area of space," interjected Isaac, the Kalen science officer. Since he had turned against his own people's attempt to massacre human life of Earth, this relationship with the crew was spotty at best. He was, however, as efficient as always. Ed Mercer smiled at the back and forth. "Lieutenant Keala, let's send them a message and remind them about their check-in schedule, please," ordered the captain gently. "Captain, scanners have reported a sudden gravitic surge in the general area of Lieutenant Malloy and Commander Bortus' shuttle." Isaac could not feel emotions, but he almost sounded anxious at this report. Ed was immediately brought to attention. "Gravitic surge? What could cause that?" he asked. "It is unclear, Captain, but we had received odd readings from that system earlier, which is why Commander Bortus and Lieutenant Malloy were dispatched. Despite my warnings, the comment was not meant as a slur but simply a reporting fact. It came off as a slur regardless." "Tala, any response to communications?" "None, sir," she responded. "Helm, set a course for that system." "John, full speed." "Tala, please send a message to Union Command that we are leaving our current position for a possible ship in distress." He looked over at his first officer and second in command. She tried to look as reassuring as she could. "Isaac, you and Commander Lamar should work up any theories on what may have caused this gravitic surge. Those do not just happen." "What was the scale of it?" asked the captain. "It was if the star suddenly quadrupled in size and then suddenly went back to normal. We will attempt further analysis, but the data is sparse," reported Isaac. "You know, the original reason they went was because of subspace readings. Maybe we should start there," suggested John Lamar. Historically, he was not considered a top flight officer, but Kelly and Ed had recently learned that he was exceptionally gifted in the area of engineering, especially as it related to quantum theory. "Isaac, let's tune sensors to scan subspace and see if we see anything." Engrossed in his work, he began to make adjustments to his equipment. He was particularly motivated as Gordon Malloy was a friend of his. He ran through several calculations on the computer and a few in his head. When satisfied, he looked at Isaac and said, "Try it now." The cybernetic being made his own adjustments and began evaluating the readings. "Captain, Commander Lamar has successfully modified our sensors to be able to scan subspace. There is a disturbance within subspace that is traveling in our general direction. It is traveling faster than light," reported Isaac. "Faster than light? Is that a natural phenomenon, Isaac?" asked Grayson. "While that is theoretically possible, I do not believe so, Commander." "Why not?" asked the first officer. "It has changed course to intercept us and is slowing down," responded Isaac. Ed Mercer sat up a little straighter. "Could this be Kalen?" asked the captain. Isaac actually pondered that question for a moment. "I do not believe so, Captain. Even during the time when I was reunited with the Kalen, they had not pursued subspace technologies. I cannot rule it out altogether." "Captain, there is something else. It appears that this disturbance is trying to hail over a subspace signal." "I can't read it," reported Lieutenant Keala. "Our equipment is not geared to read subspace in that way," responded Lamar. "I can probably modify it, but it'll take a bit." "Sounds like an invitation, John," said Kelly. Maybe if we drop to sublight they will join us. Helm, please go to sublight. For good mirror, yellow alert. He received an acknowledgement from all stations. The scenario on the viewscreen changed and the stars became very still. Everybody could be virtually seen holding their breath, with the exception of the Kalen science officer, of course. They waited for a moment, when Isaac reported, "Something seems to coming out of subspace, sir." A large ship, almost the size of a heavy cruiser, appeared in front of them. It had a large oval section on top with a smaller subsection underneath. It did not appear to have any quantum coils but rather two nacelles to the side. It did not present as a warship necessarily, but it was apparent that it was a very powerful vessel. It took a moment, but Ed soon noticed that the markings on the upper side of the large oval section had writing on it. "Isaac, is that English on the upper section?" asked Kelly. "Affirmative, Commander," was the response. Ed and Kelly just looked at each other. He was about to turn and give the order to the Zellian commander to hail the alien ship when she said, "Captain, we're being hailed." Ed took a deep breath and said, "On screen." A human-looking individual appeared standing in the middle of what was obviously a control room of some sort. He was bald and somewhat graying but was in top physical shape. Ed immediately thought he needed to get to the gym a little more often. Next to him stood a taller, somewhat younger individual with a deep beard and full head of hair. Despite the height difference, it was obvious who was in charge. Behind them stood a humanoid who was not human. At first Ed thought he might be Mochlin, but the differences became clear very quickly. To the older individual's left stood two familiar faces. Gordon Malloy and Bordis. "Captain Mercer, I am Jean-Luc Picard of the Federation Starship Enterprise. Could we possibly talk for a bit?"